It's member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, all things considered, HPR1, and I'm Dave Lawrence, and it's been a very special evening getting to spend some time in Waikiki at the Blue Note, Hawaii, with an artist who is here through Sunday, legendary voice, legendary stage performer, too, Dee Dee Bridgewater, joining us now. Thank you so much.
Hey, Dave Lawrence. It's nice to see you in person. You know, and not just hear that voice, that wonderful, wonderful radio voice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that was
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me down here. And it was a lot of fun getting to talk with you the other day. Even more fun getting to watch you doing your magic. And, you know, it was like, it really made me think, we were privileged. We had a nice talk about your roots in music. We had a lot of talking about your dad and some of his influence. You said some great things, crush on dad and the sweaters. I mean, it was just a lot of insight. But as I was working on our interview, I realized, wow, we didn't say as much about Marian and her role, and I felt it made me think I got to hear the other half of that. You know, it was like a coin. We had seen, it was like the yin without the yang. It was like we had the dog, but we didn't have the cat.
No, we didn't. You know, so my father really exposed me. My mother supported me. My mother is the one that once I had made it clear to both of my parents that I wanted to go into this industry, the entertainment industry. She was the one that stood behind me and was really there with me all the way. She was the one who told me that, okay, if I wanted to be a singer, that I should learn another trade so that if I couldn't find a gig, you know, I would have something to fall back on. So it was secretarial work, and that was what was really popular at that time. But also, you know, when I made the decision like to move to Paris, France, it was my mom that was like, okay, do it, you know, and she then would come over to see me. My mom was the one who was with me even before I went to Paris when I was having problems in my second marriage. And my second husband, who's now deceased, had become physical with me. My mother got on a plane and came out to Los Angeles where I was and brought her cousin, my second cousin, and they were going to take care of him for me. And, you know, so it's been my mother who's been with me through thick and thin ever since I entered adulthood and up until, you know, her dementia's set in.
You also credit her, it was Ella Records when you were a really little girl. Would we say that, because I can see where your dad fits in, but I also see perhaps that influence from her?
Well, my mom swears that I could scat before I could talk. I mean, you know, up until her dementia started, you know, she would always say that when I would ask her. And I can only say that it must have been true because when I was researching Ella for the Dear Ella album, I decided that I needed to listen to material from the early part of her career because I didn't really remember any of it. And so I bought some LPs and I would put them on. And if I looked at the title, I didn't know what the song was about. But as soon as it would start, I'd be like, and I was humming this song. You know, so I got to this one song, I'll never forget. It's called I Want the Waiter with the Water. I want the waiter with the water. I want the waiter with the water for my daughter. Not the butcher or the baker or the da-da-da-da-da. So I called my mother up and I was like, Mom, do you know this song? And I just said the title. And she says, oh, I used to sing that with you. I used to sing that with Ella for you when you were a baby. And I was like, I know this song. So then I just started reading her titles from that particular album, and she could hum all of these songs. And she said, that's the album that I played for you when you were a baby.
What a moment of coming full circle with something.
Yeah. So there you go. So my mother listened to singers, and my mother liked, when I was conscious of the records that my mother would bring home, the LPs, it was always lesser known singers. Like she really loved Gloria Lynn, and she really loved Lorez Alexandria, and she would play their albums I mean, over and over and over again. So I remember those two singers in particular in my house when I was a teenager. You know, Lorel's Alexandria had this hit, Baltimore Oreo. Baltimore Oreo. Took a look at the mercury, 40 below. Yeah. Yeah. And they had similar timbres to their voices. And very warm, kind of in the same register as Sarah Vaughan. But my mom didn't have any sassy records. My mom didn't have any Ella records when I was a teenager. She just had these obscure singers that I really didn't know anything about. So, but she also really helped me develop my sense of style. You know, she would buy me all the latest fashion magazines when I was a teenager, and she taught me how to sew. And so I used to make my own clothes, and I made the clothes for my singing trio. And
well, that came into hand because you said something really valuable about your experience with the Wiz, and that was some of the back, and I'm just paraphrasing you, but you were taught by some of the professionals there how to take care of your costume and stuff. So I could see how some of those lessons would come back later.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, no, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting as we get older and how we can see how things kind of fold in on top of each other, and you're like, oh wow, this led to that, which led to this other thing, and you know, it opens up your consciousness, I think.
You mentioned Paris and your mom coming over there. There must have been some specials, right? I mean, I can just imagine how many special moments that would be. And you have this international aspect to you. You're really successful in a lot of different places. Have you ever been surprised where you've made a connection where you've thought, this is so strange that this has become a regular stop for me, a place where people, you know, where it just caught you off guard that there was such a response?
I would say the first country that comes to mind is Germany. I had a really bad experience in Germany doing a jazz opera with a man named George Gruntz, and then a man who was running the Hamburg Opera Company at the time, and his name was Rolf Lieberman. And we were in Hamburg, and it was just one of the worst racial moments that I'd ever experienced. I mean, from, you know, being a child and growing up in the 50s and not being able to sit at the counter, because I did experience that. But my oldest daughter, Talani, she finished school early so she could go with me to do this play. It was called Cosmopolitan Greetings. And we would be walking down the street, and young people would roll down their windows and go, Scheisse, Scheisse, and they'd spit at us. We had a puppy, a boxer, which is a German dog, and people would try to kick our dog. We had to move several times, and I really had to pray consciously that I would not become a bigot and judge a whole country based on this experience that I had in Hamburg. And it became like my biggest record selling country after France. And that was in '88, and so all of a sudden I kept having to go to Germany. And so Germany. And then Germany. So I've always had a kind of mix. I have conflicting emotions when I go to Germany, but I've learned to accept, you know, the German culture, and I can actually understand, you know, German when I watch TV now, and I love a lot of independent German movies, you know. So that was very bizarre for me.
Well, that's a great story. That shows the total. I mean, if that doesn't get you off guard, and that ends up being one of your strongest markets, yes.
And every time I go to Germany, even today, I always remember because it was I was there for 5 months in Hamburg. Yeah.
Doing like a residency sort of deal?
It was this jazz opera, so we had to to rehearse it, and it was directed by a very famous minimalist director, Robert Wilson. Bob Wilson.
It was all pre-production, or you were on stage the whole time?
Oh no, it was on stage. Oh yeah, it was 6 shows a week. I mean, yeah, 6 shows a week.
Flip side of that, you have the strong association with Paris, and I've had family raised there, and it still continues. I mean, it's China has such a huge, owns 3 properties there. I mean, I can see the connection that she has, and when I think about your comfort zone and places that you like to be, have you gotten anything on the positive side from your international experiences that really makes you want to continue to grow this? And what I mean by that is when you get to be able to have awards like the Laurence Olivier Award, to be able to be recognized for your talent in all these places, are you drawn back to some of them just on a personal passion that takes you there when you're not working?
When I'm not working, I'm home. When I'm not working, the last thing I want to do is get on a plane and go someplace, because that's all I do is get on planes and stay in hotels. So for me, a vacation is being able to be at home and be a normal person and cook meals, go to the grocery store. I mean, do my laundry.
Where's home these days?
House. My current home is in Los Angeles in Koreatown. And so I get to feel like I'm in Seoul, Korea. And we're going to Seoul. We're going back to Seoul. I'm so excited about that. Home is where I lay my hat. Home for me is a hotel room. When we finish the gig, I say I'm going home, because I'm going to my room, which is my home, while we're here in Waikiki.
On a final note for you, very appropriate that you brought up Korea. And the reason I asked that is you are a UN ambassador, make sure I have this right, for Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And dialing back, that's, to me, it's a way you're giving back, obviously touched by the plight of people who are affected by hunger, the lack of food insecurity. How did you get this gig, and what does that mean to you for such an international performer? It just sounds kind of cool that you have that.
Well, it was the general director of the FAO at the time who approached me, Miriam Makeba, Gina Lola Brigida, and Dr. Ruth Levy Montalcini, who is a Nobel Prize winner for her research for women's cancer. We were the 4 first ambassadors to be contacted by he's now the ex-general director, and his name is Jacques Diouf, and he's from Senegal. And he selected the 4 of us because of the interesting relationships that each of us as individuals had with different sectors of people. And he thought that bringing such varied women together as the first 4 ambassadors would really speak volumes to this ambassadorship that he was trying to get off of the ground. And of the 4 of us, Miriam did visit a few. She did go on a couple of missions with Jacques Diouf, but I did a couple of very big missions with him, where I went and visited like 22 villages and saw firsthand what this particular leg of the FAO was doing. He had started these cooperatives, which were run by women in a lot of what we used to call the third world countries, but we've got third world in the United States. In countries that were more impoverished, and where they would bring in people from other countries and villages that lived in a similar manner, off of either off of the land from growing their own food or raising or growing grains and storing grains. And he would always bring in 2 people to the different villages, and they would teach a core group of women how to better whatever it is they were doing. Say, for example, they were raising livestock. He would bring two people in from another country whose village lived off of the livestock, that would work with them and teach them about the techniques for noticing any diseases, how to properly handle, the chickens, how to keep the chicken coops clean so that there would be no diseases, and they would stay for 6 months, and then these women had to in turn bring other women into this cooperation. And it's kind of like the pyramid scheme,
right.
In a way, but in a very good way,
Positive way.
a very positive way. So I went with him and
Africa? Where?
This was in Africa. We went to 22 villages around Dakar.
Wow.
And we did this in 3 days on a bus with a lot of ministers of agriculture from other countries, some countries in Africa, some countries in South America, and they had all come, and so they wanted to know how this worked too. So I did that, and then I was supposed to do some other, he called them missions. I was supposed to do some other missions. I was supposed to go deep into the Amazon, but then there were some problems, some political problems that were going on in South America at that time, and then I was supposed to go to Uruguay, but same thing happened. When he retired, the new general director, we call him Directeur Général. So the new general director is from Brazil, but I don't know him. And now my role as an ambassador has morphed into me doing infomercials for different projects that the FAO is working on, going to the United Nations in New York City, speaking on behalf of the FAO at assemblies, attending summits when they're trying to, like, when was this, like 3 years ago, it was the year of quinoa, and they invited the country of Bolivia over. And the president of Bolivia came, and so I had to sit at the table with the president of Bolivia, along with Carl Lewis, who is one of our Olympic champions. So Carl Lewis and I have been kind of put together to do a lot of stuff now with the FAO.
Like outreach sort of thing?
Not really outreach. I don't know how it's become Carl Lewis and I, but we're the ones that are called to go and do anything that has to do with the UN, any kind of functions that the FAO has going on with the United Nations in New York City. We get the call to go, and they generally ask me to speak because they think I'm a good speaker. Whatever.
You're a great speaker, great entertainer. It has to be a nice. You have a lot of feathers in your hat, but to me, that's just one more.
Yeah. Well, but I think when you get to a certain point in your career, I think it's a good thing to give back. Something that's becoming really important to me is to try and mentor young musicians and young singers, and and by mentoring, I mean, give them advice, pull their coats to different things that they should be aware of, make them aware of the legalese of the business, because most artists are not. Theo Croker here is someone that I fell in love with. We met in Shanghai when he was living there, and I produced, an album of his that came out 2 years ago and did pretty well, and now he's produced his latest CD, and but in order to help get Theo's career going, I plucked him out of Shanghai and put him in a pre-existing band that I had when I was doing the Billie Holiday repertoire, and I took him all over Europe with me, and then when the album came out, we couldn't get him a my daughter does his management now, Dee Bridgewater. We couldn't find a booking agent for him, so I said, "Oh, this is I know what to do." I let go of my band, and I took Theo and his band, and we've been together now, what, 3 years? Yeah.
This is the third year.
It's our third year. It's our third year, Mike.
It's a lot of giving back. Giving back
We're
with
going into our third year. What are you doing? What are you saying? No.
It's the third.
It's our third, Michael. Shut up, Michael. Lord have mercy. Even Theo's got to tell you it's the third, man.
It's three.
Thank you. Even if it's 1.5, you're supposed to go, yes, ma'am.
What you said, though?
It's Dee Dee Bridgewater.
You know, Mike.
It's great
I know
getting
you
to talk
mess
with you, and I really do appreciate both what you said there at school and to give back musically with the people, but I did want to acknowledge what you've done, and I don't think they would have chosen you at the UN if it wasn't for the gift that you have of communication. I really do appreciate getting to talk with you here on the radio again, and all my best to you. I hope that we get to cross paths again, have you back on the show.
I hope so too, and I've enjoyed talking to you. And you, I don't know why, but we talked about things that I've not shared with other journalists. So,
God bless you. You're welcome.
God bless you too.